and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, typically I do housekeeping and all that kind of stuff for this beginning part of the segment, but I think we're just going to skip to this, because I'm pretty sure that you all want me to talk about this. And if the certain main subject of this video didn't do this, then this would probably be the main subject of the video. But since the fact that I didn't have time for this to be a main segment, I did not watch the 2024 first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And the reason for that is very simple. I knew going in that it wasn't going to be good. I knew going in that it was not going to be good. Though, I didn't think it was going to be like the same capacity. I thought it was going to be the same kind of bad that the 2020 debate was. But, as many people have been pointing out, it is a different kind of bad, because one of the biggest things that everybody's been talking about is the fact that Joe Biden, when he went on the debate stage, was just so very bad. I've seen only a couple of clips. I literally just, everyone else was talking about it, and I was just too busy editing the big video project that I've been working on, and basically, I was just I'd rather be focusing on that than, this debate. But I did hop into the debate, just once to see how things were, and it wasn't that good. And, literally, when I went in, it coincidentally was right around the time they talked about Israel-Palestine, and I was like, okay, so I'll stick around for this segment, and then I'll leave. And that segment gave me exactly what I thought was going to happen. Joe Biden was going to be basically half there. Meanwhile, Donald Trump would basically ignore the question, ramble on about his talking points, and then move on. And people are just not enthused about it. Many people going so far as to be incredibly doomeristic about Joe Biden's chances now that they have seen him in this debate. And there are a lot of people saying a lot of different things. So let's just try to say the things, let's just try to do things as streamlined as I can. Okay, so first, a lot of people have been trying to figure out, okay, if Biden is this bad, why did he schedule the debate early? And a lot of people have concluded that the reason why is because he was hedging the bet that Donald Trump was going to not enter the debate, because Donald Trump was very much keen on the fact that he didn't want to do debates at all. But one thing a lot of people have been trying to do is trying to figure out what is the Democratic Party's next move, assuming that there is a next move. Because a lot of people really just cannot fathom the idea that the Democrats would continue to have Joe Biden as the nominee. Even though, as I've stated many, many times in the past, they basically have no other option. Guys, I'm sorry to break it to you. I'm sorry for all you guys. I gotta be realistic here. There's more than likely not going to be a brokered convention. There's more than likely not going to be an open convention. As I said when he announced his bid, Biden is more than likely going to be the nominee. Unless he literally dies, he will be the Democratic nominee. In fact, Biden has actually been trying to do things to make things worse for the Democrats, because he's been pushing the idea that maybe the Democrats don't even do the Democratic convention, and the delegates give the nomination to Biden before the convention even happens. I don't know if they're going to do this now, because I'm pretty sure a lot of them are a bit hesitant, because I've said, a lot of people have been freaking out. Everybody has been freaking out. The left has been pointing this out for years, but apparently now everyone else has finally caught up. With basically every single liberal news organization, liberal pundit, liberal activist, liberal politician, just openly just being okay, yeah, this is probably not the best idea. For politicians especially, they get open as long as they don't get to say who they are. Quite literally, you'll see this. Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and Gregory Meeks, Jim Clyburn, ton of other Democratic politicians in public on Twitter or everywhere else, they will openly say Biden, he might have had a bad debate night, but he's fine. But then whenever a Democratic, there's literally a message that was on a fucking Democratic House members server, a Discord server or an email chain or something, where they literally joked that they picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue because they're so mad about what has been going on with this. And a lot of people even went so far as to say that Biden is officially done. Like, he is going to lose the next election. I'm not that far yet. Because it could just be a me thing. I think this really is just a me thing, but I really don't think a lot of people are swayed by this. Because I honestly don't think, because it's really hard to say, because I have to put myself in the mindset of someone that I just cannot be. I have to put myself in the mindset of someone who, the only people who would really be, it's still hard to decide. It's really hard to say, because I have to put myself in the mindset of someone who doesn't pay attention to issues, doesn't pay attention to politics, doesn't do anything. But is someone like that even going to be voting in this upcoming election? Like, I mean, quite literally, yeah. Is someone like that going to be voting in this election? And would this really sway their mind? Because, like, again, a lot of the people who voted for Joe Biden in the last election, they all knew that he was, like, a shit, like, old man. Like, they all knew this. They knew that he was a shitty politician. They knew he was, like, a decrepit old man. They knew this already. And they voted for him anyways. Like, I knew this beforehand, and I already made my mind that I'm going to be voting for him in 2024. I already made up my mind that that's what's going to happen. Nothing is going to change that, barring the Democrats picking a different person to be the nominee. And there's another factor that makes me go a little hesitant to say, like, oh, it's over for Biden. And it's because of Ronald Reagan. This exact same thing happened to Reagan back in the 80s. There were some concerns about his age, like, oh, well, Reagan seems a little weird, like, his age is getting a little bit of an issue. And then, during the first presidential debate, he was literally doing the debate, and then, like, a couple of times he kept stumbling over his words, and then he, like, started fumbling around. Like, he would, like, he literally grabbed his desk in, like, panic. His own fucking son, Ron, literally wrote a book where he explained that he knew that back in 1984, when he was running for the second term, when this happened, he literally was like, yeah, it was pretty obvious that he was suffering through Alzheimer's disease, which he literally would be diagnosed with, coincidentally, after his administration. Mondale was seen as the victor of that debate, and people were saying, maybe there's a chance that that Reagan would lose. It didn't end up happening, but, I mean, you can't really say Biden is Reagan and Reagan is Biden. Like, you can't really necessarily 100% compare the two. And but the other factor of that is just Trump. Like, if it was anyone else, like, I mean, if you look back to my old videos back during the 2020 election, I made it very abundantly clear that I thought that if the Democrats nominated Biden back in 2020, that they would lose handily to Trump. Then the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and Biden shot up immensely. Because Trump mishandled the COVID pandemic so bad that literally anybody else was seen as a better option. And I really just can't fathom Americans being so fucking stupid that they would just go, yeah, we're just gonna do that again. We're gonna let the guy that fucked things up so bad. If they continued to let Trump fuck it up immediately during the COVID pandemic, then that'd be one thing. But, I know a lot of you might go to the comments and be like, they let Reagan serve another term. Yeah, but that was because they were in the midst of Reagan's revolution. They continued to let Bush fuck things up for a while because they were in the midst of the hype of Bush. Like, if they rode the wave, then that makes sense. But I can't see, them ride the wave, then go, oh, we don't like this, get off, and then immediately get back on the wave. Like, when that happens with other candidates, they usually have to, flip the candidates every so often. You know, boring white guy for the Democrats, boring white guy for the Republicans, boring black guy for the Democrats, boring white guy for the Republicans. They have to, flip it. They have to make it different people. I still say we can't really factor anything into how the race will go until after the convention. Also because there's a thing that a lot of people have been using, apparently. I don't know how long people have been using this, because I literally only heard about this tool today. What's it called? The 13 Keys to the White House? Where there's this political scientist named Alan Lichtman, who basically, he runs in circles every day because he, quote unquote, predicted the winner of the presidential election correct basically every single time, with the quote-unquote exception of 2000. And because this is a little bit weird, because 2000, 2016, he technically has like a little wiggle rooms because like he predicted that Gore would win in 2000, and then after he lost, he basically said, well, my thing actually predicted that he would win the popular vote, and then he used that same tool to say that, oh yeah, Trump will win in 2016, but Trump didn't win the popular vote. But he's like, no, you see, this time I was predicting the Electoral College. It's like, you're just changing things up when you just don't get your way, man. That's what you're doing. Like, I'm sorry, you can't use one tool to 100% definitively be predicting right every single election. Like, that's the sad truth. Factors can happen all the time. Regardless, whatever. After the conventions, that's when people can start taking a look at the polls seriously. That's when people can start taking a look at, like, Biden's fumble seriously. That's when people can start looking at Alan Lichtman seriously. Like, that's when that stuff happens. Because after the conventions, like, that's it. You can't do any changes after that. We have people, again, still hypothetically floating around the idea that maybe the Dems will just switch Biden out. People still have that in their head. Even though that's not going to happen, people still have it in their head. But anyways, let's just move on to actual stories this time, because I've been rambling a lot about this topic, and I haven't even seen the debates. Since we were talking a lot about American stuff, we'll shift over to the first American news, which is coincidentally fucking terrible news. Jamal Bowman has sadly lost to AIPAC. Actually, he lost to George Latimer. No, he lost to AIPAC. Like, I mean, a lot of people are trying to, like, pretend that this has nothing to do with AIPAC, or trying to pretend that AIPAC played little to no factor in this race. But, guys, AIPAC spent $14.5 million on this one seat. Like, I've seen people just clamor and try to pretend like, no, you see, you can't do this. You can't pretend, you can't blame, like, them. You can't blame, quote unquote, like, I've gotten into, like, debates about this, like, on the site Our Campaigns. If you don't know, I, like, post on Our Campaigns, and there's these fucking stupid idiots on there. One of them is Brent in Colorado. Basically, he started out as, like, a centrist Republican, and now he's basically going on, like, a fasci arc, because that's what he is. He literally backed the guy Kyle Rittenhouse supports. So it's like, yeah, he's clearly going through a fasci arc. He, like, shit-talked a person running in the UK elections because of their appearance, because they're a woman. But yeah, he basically made this whole spiel about, like, oh, you see, like again, pay attention to the people who are cheering for Bowman's loss. You got people like this, and you got people, like, literally, you have, like fucking diehard literal fascists being like, yeah, Bowman's gone! And it's like, interesting that those are the people that are celebrating Bowman's loss. And he tried to do a crocodile tears where it's like, oh, people like you and Bowman who are, like, scapegoating Jews and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. It's like, literally just rambling nonsense. Again, trying to pretend that the $14.5 million AIPAC spent on this seat alone, just, you can't, why is that, like, weird that you can't mention this? I don't get it. And then every time I brought up how AIPAC did it, or the Zionist lobby, he would always say, why are you scapegoating Jews? Like, I didn't say Jews. Who said Jews? I didn't say Jews. You're the one who said it, not me. It's the same crocodile tears nonsense that everybody always wants to do whenever they want to, like, shit talk people who care about Palestinians. Like, literally, it's always just, how do the Israelis feel? How do they feel about this? Like, and he also brought up, like, a thing that was like, oh, you see, they're protesting synagogues. That's so bad. It's like, oh yeah, but, like, the specific one you're bringing up is actually, like, because this specific synagogue literally was trying to sell land in the illegally occupied Gaza settlements to people in America. That's why they were protesting, not because they were Jewish. Like, bruh, I literally advocated for giving my homeland, like, both of my literal bloodline homelands, control to two Jewish individuals. I mean, that's a bit interesting. But yeah, back to Bowman. A lot of people are trying to blame other factors into why he lost. No, just shut up. It's not that. It's not, oh, he pulled the fire alarm. It's literally two things. One, gerrymandering. He was drawn into a district. He was literally drawn into a district where basically he was in a heavily black district. Then they drew it so that half of his district went into a very heavily white neighborhood, And then the other half of his district was given to Mondaire Jones or Richie Torres, one of the two, I forget which one. Their three districts are really close to each other, so it could be either or. There were literally people on Twitter who were going around explaining how there were elderly black women who really wanted to vote for Jamal Bowman, but were drawn out of his district. And this is a spiel that people have used, that redistricting always does. They'll always do things like this to redraw districts so that people who are not favorable will get kicked out. In North Carolina, Brad Miller got gerrymandered out of his district. In Ohio, Dennis Kucinich was drawn out of his district and forced to compete against Marcy Kaptur. Illinois forcibly had Sean Casten and Marie Newman fight each other. Michigan had Haley Stevens and Andy Levin. It's a common tactic that's used to draw out not just people of an opposition party, which is also very common. North Carolina literally had an even district split, and then North Carolina Republicans gerrymandered it so that literally all but 3 Democrats had to leave office, but also to draw out specifically some members of the opposition party. And then AIPAC will then spend $14.5 million in that seat. And that's what happened. If $14.5 million, it's the same thing with people who say you see, the reason why Cuba's economy is failing is because they're communist. It's or it could be because we have heavy economic sanctions on them, and it's a sad truth. It's I would love to have been shown that Jamal Bowman was just a bad candidate, but I'll never be able to judge that clearly because AIPAC spent $14.5 million in this one seat. I'm harping on that number, but that is true. AIPAC spent $14.5 million. AIPAC spent $14.5 million. AIPAC spent $14.5 million on one seat. One seat. I literally saw a tweet that said that that is more money than what the UK election has spent in 1 year. Fuck AIPAC. Jamal Bowman should run on the Working Families Party line, or just not give his line away so that he ruins it. I don't care. I don't care if Latimer loses. I genuinely don't give a fuck. Latimer deserves to fucking lose. We're not getting any more, no more AIPAC bot Zionists are going into Congress. Bro, if only that were true. Am I right? Anyways, let's move on to some foreign news. And believe it or not, all 3 of them are actually good news. Okay, so first, I'm going to have to get into a little bit of an explanation on Kenya. So for those who don't know, Kenya is currently run by a president named William Ruto. And what ended up happening was that he had a finance bill that he was pushing to be in this legislature. And it ended up passing the legislature. And this finance bill was very, very, very controversial. One of the things that was very controversial was the fact that it was going to have a ton of tax hikes for the lower and middle class. So what ended up happening is a ton of protesters started protesting in the streets and even the Parliamentary building. They even broke into the Parliamentary building, and a lot of videos and footage have been floating around about this. And what ended up happening was, unfortunately, 22 people were killed because William Ruto sicked the police officers on them. But the good news came from the end, where he revealed that he would be pulling his support from that bill because the protests were so bad that he literally had no other option. And genuinely good news for Kenya. I'm grateful that you guys are actually able to get some good things coming from your president. Speaking of good things and presidents, Bolivia. Well, Bolivia had a very, very funny thing that just happened. Apparently, so we gotta explain the backstory about this one too, because the backstory behind this one is fucking stupid. Alright, so let me explain. It's very ironic that this happened because one of the next videos that one of the next podcasts that I planned on making is possibly, my problems with MAS, the left-wing political party in Bolivia. But anyways, if you don't remember, I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but MAS has been having some internal conflicts. And there's a split between the wing that is supported by the current president, Luis Arce, and one's led by the former president, Evo Morales. And Evo Morales is trying to run for president in the 2025 election against Arce. Technically, he would try to replace Arce as the MAS candidate, but that's not here or there. I'll explain more about it in that episode when I really have to do that. But then one of the leaders of the military, named Juan Jose Zuniga, made a very stunning announcement, because the Electoral Tribunal says that Evo Morales cannot run in the upcoming election. So Juan made a decision and made an announcement saying that if Evo Morales attempts to run in the next election, he will be arrested by the military. And this was seen as very controversial. So Arce was left with no other option except to relieve Zuniga of his position of general in the Bolivian army. Zuniga got so mad at Arce for what he did that literally the following day, he tried to initiate a coup against Arce, and this coup attempt was so bad that literally nobody supported it. Like, it wasn't supported overwhelmingly by the military, it was just supported by one specific faction of the military led by him. Many of the, people who plotted the last Bolivian coup had no involvement in this whatsoever, even outright condemning it. Janine Áñez literally made a tweet saying, we do not support this. Everybody just didn't support it. And almost immediately, the, biggest union in the country announced that they would host a general strike, effectively cutting off any, support. That's one thing that was very good about this one. And it was the fact that Bolivians, since they already went through a coup very recently, they didn't pull any punches. Protesters immediately went to the streets. People immediately started fighting against the soldiers who were doing this. And there's fucking amazing footage out there of literally, soldiers fleeing from people waving around the flags of Bolivia. And one incident that happened that almost immediately started spreading around was the fact that Zuniga literally went into the presidential palace with soldiers ready to take charge of the country. And Arce literally stood his ground and started screaming in Zuniga's face, yelling at him, "I am your captain, and I order you to withdraw your soldiers. I will not tolerate this insubordination." Which made me say a very hot take in my Discord server, where I said that technically, by definition, Arce has more balls than Evo Morales. Because when Evo was faced with his coup, he ran away. Meanwhile, when Arce was faced with his coup, he stood his ground and literally yelled in the face of the coup plotter. Now, I understand that there is a difference between the situation regarding Evo Morales and the situation regarding Luis Arce. Again, Arce's coup had the advantage of the fact that nobody supported it at all, and Morales did not have that. Unfortunately, he did not have that, ability, because his coup had a lot of support. But one thing that really made me, it made me, interesting, it was interesting, because I saw that picture, and then I saw the video of it, and I immediately knew. And I was about to type something in my Discord server when I saw a tweet in my feed. It was of Zuniga getting arrested. And what I was going to think was, my thought was that with this specific, event, I was going to type, how long until people start believing that this is a conspiracy theory? And sure enough, literally as I was doing that, I saw the tweet where Zuniga is apparently claiming that Arce told him to commit a self-coup in order to boost his chances against Evo Morales come the 2025 election. I don't know how many people believe him. It will probably only be believable once Evo Morales starts claiming that as well. If Evo starts claiming it, then I'll have to unfortunately say that Evo is trash. Because if Evo really claims that, then he's going to just be full-on trash. Speaking of trash, that's a bit of an odd transition to the next story, but big news: Julian Assange is free. Yes, big news. Julian Assange, he entered a plea deal with the Biden administration, and the plea deal basically meant you admit to what you did, you admit to doing the bad things that we've been trying to get you for. And then we essentially just let you go. And yeah, like, just out of the blue, randomly, Julian Assange is just free. That puts a little bit of a bind in, not a bind necessarily, but like puts a little bit of interesting notions for my my like big project that I'm making, because there's a specific like segment about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and well, it ended originally abruptly with the fact that Julian Assange might not be free. Now he is free, so I'll at least be able to add that part in the video. But yeah, there's really not much else to say on this. And that's because of a lot of different reasons. I'll be real and say this, because this is going to be a hot take, I say. Like, yes, Julian Assange did a good thing, and he should be freed. But, let's be real. Julian Assange is a fucking dick. He's a dick, an asshole, and a right-winger. The more you learn about Julian Assange, the more you realize that he's just not really that cool. The dubious, like sexual harassment / rape cases against him, the fact that he nearly got Evo Morales fucking murdered, which I talked a little bit about in the big project. But TLDR, basically, he lied to the American intelligence agencies and claimed that Evo Morales was secretly harboring Edward Snowden in his plane, so that when he went back to America, when he was going to go back to Bolivia, like, a couple of European countries said, like, yeah, Evo Morales, if you fly over us, we're going to shoot you down, so land immediately. The fact that he literally told Donald Trump Jr., hey, if Trump loses, claim that the election was rigged, and then just don't concede. Gee, I wonder if that led to anything really big and bad. But yeah, Julian Assange is free, and now we have to play the waiting game. How long does it take for him to get in trouble again? Let's see, how long does it take? With that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. Ah yes, something that is very rare on this channel. Me talking about a foreign election in a country that is actually English. Quite literally, that's England. Well, the United Kingdom. Technically, they're not the same thing, except for the fact that the UK basically sees it as just England, regardless. Yes, the United Kingdom is going to be holding elections on July 4th. Very ironic. But anyways, let's just get into some of the things. What's some of the prelude and importance for this election and all the other jazz? The UK's politics has been going massively downhill for a long period of time. A lot of people are calling it a dying empire, accurately. Others say their politics was failing way before they started becoming a dying empire. But many people point out that the UK started falling right around the time the US did, 2014, 2016. The biggest thing being Brexit, when the United Kingdom, England and Wales, voted to leave the European Union because a subsection of conservatives used reactionary talking points about Muslim refugees mixed with populist talking points about the NHS, their national healthcare service, to get people to vote for something that will literally cause a hell of a lot of problems. One of the biggest ones is the fact that the United Kingdom is a forced union of 4 countries: Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is a subsection of the island of Ireland, which is divided into the Republic of Ireland, which is independent from the United Kingdom, and Northern Ireland, which is considered a province of the United Kingdom. Due to long-standing tensions that I can't really get into in this episode, the shortest answer I can give is that a lot of people in Northern Ireland are Protestant, which are more aligned with the United Kingdom's religion, at least back in the day. Meanwhile, a lot of people in the Republic of Ireland are Catholic, a staunch antithesis to Protestantism. And Brexit kind of like propelled a lot of the United Kingdom's parties to basically just start shifting into radical fringes in their own right. In Scotland, we had Nicola Sturgeon, who shifted her party to be more left-wing and to be more focused on the Scottish independence issue. We had Nigel Farage leaving UKIP, or the United Kingdom Independence Party, when they became full-blown Nazis, to create a brand new party to talk about Brexit and hard right issues. Then we had Jo Swinson, who led her party of the Liberal Democrats into irrelevance by running to the literal radical center. But of course, the bigger 2 figureheads of British politics in the post-Brexit world were Jeremy Corbyn for the Labourites and Boris Johnson of the Tories. Corbyn decided to take the Labour Party back to its roots of socialism. The red flag waved once more. And at first, things seemed to be going really well, and people were open to the idea. He did well against the first new Tory leader, Theresa May, but there were a couple of things that made Corbyn look a little worse to the eyes of the British public. One was him basically ignoring the Brexit issue, because a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about this, because Corbyn himself, back in the olden days, I think, if I remember correctly, Corbyn was originally against the idea of the UK joining the EU to begin with. But now that he was the head of the Labour Party, he ran as a Remainer purely because the Tories, like at least a majority of the Tory base, ran on being Brexiteers. Not helped by the fact that the way that the Tories ran as Brexiteers meant very harshly attacking Muslim immigrants. And Corbyn has tried to make a point to be friendly to Muslims. And the fact that Corbyn loved Muslims, and specifically Palestinians, led to many people accusing him of being an anti-Semite, and having rampant anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. Which was hyped up a lot, due to the fact that the media fucking hated Jeremy Corbyn, because Corbyn's a socialist, and would actually run policies that were antithesis to what the media wanted, leading to them, again, hyper-focusing on the fact that the British Labour Party was very much anti-Semitic, quote-unquote, while ignoring the fact that a lot of Tories just openly hated Jews, which culminated in the Labour Party losing by a decent margin in 2019, forcing Jeremy Corbyn to resign as leader of the Labour Party, thinking that they needed a new direction. We'll not talk about that new direction quite yet. Let's talk a little bit about Boris Johnson, who was the leader of the Tory party for a little bit, basically becoming a fat Nigel Farage, leading to him win big in 2019. But unfortunately, multiple scandals happened, which led to him resign as leader. Then came Liz Truss, who resigned a mere 50 days after taking office. And now they have a new leader. And we won't talk about him quite yet either. So you can see why people have been calling it a dying empire. So what are the major issues for the UK coming into this election? Well, here are the ones that I've gathered from basically looking at how the candidates have been running elections. 1, immigration. 2, trans rights. 3, the union. And we'll get into why some of this stuff is important as issues when we actually analyze the candidates/parties. So why don't we get into that? Because that's going to be the more interesting part of this video. In the UK Parliament, 13 political parties are represented. That's right, 13 parties. Forcing 4 different countries into running as one big union will do that for you. Because yes, effectively, the United Kingdom is 4 separate countries who are forced to all band together into one union of sorts. Except the problem is, the union is effectively considers itself a country too. So that just leads into a really weird thing where we'll get into a little bit about this when we get into like some independence parties, but like it really just bugs me that it really just seems like a lot of the UK discourse quite literally just stems from England. And it's because England overpopulates all the other countries in the UK. Like, I mean, literally, Scotland and Ireland voted overwhelmingly to remain in the European Union. Meanwhile, England and Wales voted to leave the EU. Why wasn't it just like, okay, EU, you can have Welsh people and England leave, but, like, why not have, like, Ireland and fucking Scotland stay? Regardless, yeah, there are 13 political parties that are currently represented in the legislature, and all 13 of the parties are technically considered relevant to some capacity. I think we can kind of divide the parties in the United Kingdom into broadly 3 categories. We can divide them on a lot of ways. We can divide them based on ideology, we can divide them based on, like, region, we can divide them based on, like, other things, like single issue, one issue, multiple issue, whatever. But really, I think we can broadly divide them into 3 groups. First, I like to call this group the fringe. The parties that are really, really small. Like maybe on like a provincial level or like a local level they might do well. But in the big elections of the United Kingdom Parliament, they're probably just doomed to remain like small parties. at least as of now. Currently, we have 3 parties that are representative in this capacity. First, we have Reform UK, a right-wing populist party formed as the Brexit Party by former UK Independence Party leader Nigel Farage in order to lead the UK out of the EU. Then it transitioned into an anti-COVID lockdown party before becoming a generic right-wing populist party. Their candidate for Prime Minister is Nigel Farage. The next party is the Workers' Party of Great Britain, a so-called conservative socialist party formed by another strange thorn in the UK's electoral side, George Galloway. Galloway used to be a Labour MP until he told the British military to defy the orders of Tony Blair in the wake of the Iraq War. Then he founded the Respect Party to oppose Western foreign policy, briefly returned to Parliament before becoming a pundit for Russia and Iran. Then he got really into Brexit and started palling around with Nigel Farage. Then he founded the pro-British All for Unity Party to rejoin Parliament a second time, losing massively. Then he founded the Workers' Party of Great Britain to do the same thing a third time, and this was when he shifted his grift. Originally, he used to just Jew bait his opponents and then pretend he was a Muslim. Look it up, that's actually real. Literally, he would run in Labour districts that had heavily Muslim populations, associate his opponents with Jews, and then associate himself with Muslims, to the point where many people in the UK literally believed that George Galloway was secretly a Muslim. But then, in 2021, he started doing something interesting. Like, while he was talking about, like, all these issues, like, he would talk about, like, issues that he normally would do, Jew baiting, and he would also, like, be like, oh yeah, supporting my Muslim brotherhood. But then, he started noticing something interesting. A lot of the Muslim voters in that district were really concerned about, like, social issues. So we started talking a little bit about some social issues. And then, while doing so, some Tories started shifting their focus towards Galloway. And that led to Galloway start shifting to focus more on getting those Tory voters. And that's when he fully began his conservative socialist grift. A grift that he has maintained, especially considering one of the heads of the Workers' Party of UK was a person who was the head of the Marxist-Leninist Party in the UK, who was literally like a super transphobe. And then he thought that he would win with that, but it didn't work. And then October 7th happened, and, well, he was able to focus purely on the Israel-Palestine issue when he ran for the Rochdale by-election. And he ended up winning. And now, unfortunately, Galloway is shifting the party strategy again. Not only is he going to, like, do this, but he's actually making some smart decisions and choosing to have his party stand down in specific constituencies to back other opponents. 12 seats, his party is backing an independent candidate, and I'm pretty sure one of them literally specifically stood down to run in that election. Like, they specifically said, no, we are not going to have a candidate run in this seat. We're going to endorse this independent candidate. So, unfortunately, this could work somewhat for Galloway. And the last party that is partially considered in the fringe category is the Green Party of England and Wales, an environmentalist political party in England and Wales, originally formed as the Green Party of the UK before they split into 3 regional parties. I put JPU in the, like, fringe category because they currently only have 1 seat in the parliament, and yes, they do somewhat okay in regards to, like, regional or local elections, but really, this party is not really going to be doing so hot electorally in the, like, parliament. The next category are the nationalist parties. These parties are notable in one specific area. Like, I was actually kind of considering putting GPEW in this category, just because of the fact that they were considered but they're not really like a regionalist party. These ones are like specifically like nationalist regionalist parties. Like, their issues specifically relate to the fact that they are in their specific area. And due to this fact, they aren't going to be doing so hot in the elections. Realistically, none of these guys have a chance to become prime minister, so there's really basically no point in talking about their prime minister candidates. we're only going to be focusing on the party and the ideology broadly. First, we have the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland, a centrist political party in Northern Ireland that, to a degree, is considered an affiliate of a British party. Then there's the Alba Party, a Scottish nationalist and socially conservative political party formed by the First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, after his old party kicked him out due to sexual harassment allegations. Next is the Social Democratic and Labour Party, an Irish nationalist and social democratic political party. Next, we have the Democratic Unionist Party, a conservative and Ulster loyalist political party. Unlike the rest of the nationalist parties in Ireland, they are actually British nationalists. And then lastly, we have the big three when it comes to the nationalist political parties. First, we have Plaid Cymru, a social democratic socialist, Welsh nationalist political party. Next, we have Sinn Féin, an Irish Republican and left-wing nationalist political party, which is very interesting in one regard. Unlike the rest of the parties that go to Westminster, the Sinn Féin make an explicit point to reject the British Parliament. So they take their seat, they run with their seats, but they refuse to take them when they actually go. They don't go to Westminster. They report to a separate Parliament building in Ireland. And Sinn Féin's main focus for this election is basically to try and boost morale for a independence referendum in Ireland. And lastly, we have the Scottish National Party, a Scottish nationalist and left-wing populist political party. They're the only one whose PM candidate I will mention, only due to the fact of a specific issue that they've been having. Their PM candidate is First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney. Now, Swinney was actually a replacement for their most recent person to lead the SNP, Humza Yousaf, who replaced Nicola Sturgeon. You see, basically, Nicola Sturgeon, she ran, and I think she's currently facing some scandals with some issues, so she decided to resign, and Humza Yousaf got to be the new candidate. But due to mishandling of an alliance within Scotland, he ended up having to resign, and Swinney is the new candidate. And one of the reasons why he's interesting is he's trying to step away from the elements that have caused not only the Alba Party to leave and form their own separate political party, but also, basically, he's trying to maintain his focus on the Scottish, possible Scottish second referendum. Because Scotland has had an independence referendum in 2014, but that didn't work. So he's trying to do it again. And lastly, we have the quote-unquote big three. The three parties that are mostly regarded as the quote-unquote real politics of the United Kingdom. And first, we get the one that barely makes it on here, the Liberal Democrats, a liberal political party that used to be a decent third choice for the UK, but has dropped massively since the 2010s, basically only appeals to a specific subsection of the liberal upper class in the United Kingdom. As such, the Lib Dems have really been trying hard to rebrand into something interesting to become relevant again. From 2015 to 2019, their whole shtick was basically, we are the return to EU party. But that hasn't worked as well as they wanted, so they have rebranded again. This time, taking aim at the Tories in an attempt to win soft conservatives, as they say, running in really blue seats, and calling out the far-right shift of the Tory party, basically attempting to paint themselves as the true opponents to the Tories. And they've also added some elements of social progressivism in there, in the wake of certain things on the other side of the aisle. How well this is going to go? Well, come back to me during the polling section. Their PM candidate is Ed Davey, who's been making the rounds around the world because of one element in his platform, disability rights, which hits really close to home when you learn that he has a son with disabilities, which has made him look 10 times more sympathetic to the British people. Next, we'll just talk about the party that's in charge right now, because why not? I have a lot more to say about the other party than I have about this one. A Conservative Party, or the Tory Party, a Conservative Party that has been shifting rightward since Brexit. Their PM candidate is Rishi Sunak. But the party that I'm pretty sure you all want me to talk about is the British Labour Party, a social democratic political party which represents the broad centre-left of the United Kingdom. Depending on your interpretation, there are either very few or many factions within the British Labour Party. It can be based on a lot of things. It can be based on figures, it can be based on ideologies, blah blah blah. For the sake of this video, we'll go with a more ideological breakdown. I'm gonna try to refer to it purely by ideologies, but I will mention some names that make you think oh yeah, this is clearly this faction. Alright, so there are 3 broad factions of the British Labour Party. Faction 1 is neoliberalism. It's a relatively newer strain of Labour politics, taking head in the 1990s thanks to a well-known politician named Tony Blair, with this faction commonly being referred to as quote-unquote New Labour, or simply put, Blairism. Now, since Blair is obviously the most well-known person of this ideology, but other people who are associated with it are shadow cabinet members Wes Streeting, Liz Kendall, and Darren Jones. Then, there's the social democratic faction within the party, traditionally known as quote-unquote the soft left. Technically, some people would consider the soft left and New Labour kind of the same category because technically Tony Blair considers himself a social democrat to an extent, but there's enough ideological. This is basically why we consider it 2 different things. Because first, there was the soft left trend that broke away from the traditional Labour Party, and then came the Blairites, which seemed like it was just the natural evolution of the soft left Social Democrats. But then, after Blairism became unpopular, then a new wave of Social Democrats formed to basically oppose the Tony Blair faction, but to make it known, no, we're not we're not hard left socialists. We're still very critical of the hard left socialists, but we're still we're soft left. The politicians most seemingly associated with it are Gordon Brown and Ed Miliband. Others include Mayor of London Sadiq Khan and members of Parliament Angela Rayner and Lisa Nandy. And lastly, we have the Democratic Socialist faction, sometimes known under the eponymous Labour left, the hard left, or the pejorative loony left. There is another way you can define it, and they use the term Corbynism or Bennism because of 2 communist politicians associated with it, Tony Benn and Jeremy Corbyn. Others include Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, and Rebecca Long Bailey. Their leader is currently a man by the name of Keir Starmer, who is their prime minister candidate. What faction is Starmer? Well, when he was running for Labour leader, it was really hard to tell what faction he was, because he basically said everything. I'm a socialist. I'm pragmatic. I'm not a fan of labels. I see what all you guys say. He gave positive things to say about Corbyn, Benn, and other figures, and Blair, but he also gave criticisms of those figures, so it was really hard to tell what faction he really was. But the closest thing people could say is that, going in, he seemed to be broadly soft left. But then, when he actually got elected, he went into a very interesting direction, to the point where he literally seems to be to the right of Tony Blair, and it comes from 2 broad reasons. 1, actual policies. Starmer, in order to prevent Labourites from flocking to people like George Galloway, has decided to jump heavy on the anti-trans bullshit. Literally every left-wing party in the United Kingdom has some issues with trans people. I don't know why. Every single party in the UK who is left-wing has some hint and weirdness in regards to trans people. The only exceptions I can think of is maybe Plaid and Sinn Féin, but I don't know. Sinn Féin originally, didn't they have a Sunflower Socialists? You know the answer. But weren't they originally really hard right when it came to social views due to their staunch Catholicism? I know they were harder right on things like abortion up until recently, but did they include LGBTQ rights? But now Labour is shifting hard to like get TERFs to join in with their party, relying on sex-based human rights bullshit. Another thing came from the fact that he is jumping on the quote-unquote gangs of illegal immigrants bullshit. Like, despite the fact that Jeremy Corbyn was trying to make a big point to get Muslims to support the Labour Party by, like, saying, like, yes, our immigrant brothers and sisters, we are all friends. Like, now, Starmer's just like, nope, you're all illegal immigrant gang members. And two, it's been the fact that Keir Starmer has been making a very big point to clean house of the left. Even worse than the previous time it happened. Like, Labour leaders, kind of this is the thing, like, Labour leaders have kind of, like, had issues with the left sometimes, but most of the times it usually is very rare exceptions. Like, stuff that can't, I think back during the Blairism times, the only one that was, delisted and deselected was fucking Galloway. And then I think, when it came again, I think it was Livingstone who got, kicked. But it seems like Starmer is making a really big point to just try to kick out as many left-wing candidates as he can. Now, there's a video by TLDR UK that basically explains that some of it was kind of an issue, not just with, him. Basically, there's, two ways it could happen. One, he could very politely go to the, individual Labour Party within that area, and then politely ask the leaders to not select the candidates that he doesn't like. But then, in the wake of this election, he basically was able to take charge of all of the Labour parties and then specifically make points to choose and not choose certain candidates. And there have been a lot of notable examples of people who were nearly, either kicked out fully or were nearly kicked out of the party because of issues with Starmer that he's had with them. I guess we should start with the very obvious one, Jeremy Corbyn being famously booted out of the Labour Party, with Starmer making explicit point to say that he can't come back. A situation happened not that long ago where Keir Starmer was trying to gaslight Diane Abbott into not running by pretending that she was still under investigation for sharing a clip where Jon Stewart criticized Israel. Lloyd Russell Moyle was booted from the Labour Party for a vague complaint about his behavior 8 years ago. Beth Winter was deselected because she critiqued the process of selecting candidacies in the Labour Party as undemocratic. When Mick Whitley, a Corbynite, was drawn in the same constituency as a Blairite and Alison McGovern, guess who the party chose to be the nominee? The one that makes the least sense is the deselection of Sam Tarry. Tarry was deselected as the Labour Party candidate because, get this, he attended a labor strike, then went on the news to express support for that labor strike. They had some vague bullshit oh, you see, he was trying to dictate party politics because he made an explicit point don't go to these protests. And then Sam Tarry was one of a couple of members of the British Labour Party that did go to those protests. I think one of them actively chose to step down, and one of them will be running in this upcoming election. But Tarry was explicitly deselected. And this last one isn't an incumbent Labour MP, but it is a situation that has similar stipulations. There's a candidate by the name of Faiza Shaheen, who was a person who was considered a rising star within the Labour Party. Many people even go so far as to compare her to AOC, literally claiming she is Britain's AOC. Then she was chosen to be the Labour Party's candidate in the election, and ended up losing, but she tried, and she was slated to run again in this election. In July of 2022, she was slated to run as the Labour, she was chosen by the Labour Party to be the candidate in the next election, because they choose their candidates early. Sometimes they'll choose the candidates early, and sometimes they'll wait until the election actually happens. She was all set and ready to go, but then she was deselected because she shared the Jon Stewart Israel clip. I don't get, why is this clip so offensive? It's a Jewish man criticizing Israel. Is that bad? Why? Why is that bad? Anyways, let's get into some of the events that happened in this election. There are really only 3 events that I thought were noteworthy just because they're funny. Okay, so first, was the thing that happened right before the election began. A scandal arose for the Conservatives as Rishi Sunak's parliamentary private secretary had placed a £100 bet that the election was going to happen in July, a mere 3 days before Sunak called the election to be held in July, which made people say that he might have, quote-unquote, been using private information to push out that idea and put a bet, which, if you know anything about the United States, that's illegal. You can't do that. We have a similar rule in the stock market, where if you know that Steve Jobs is dead, but it hasn't been reported on yet, you can't then immediately go, I'm selling all my Apple stock. And then he was going to do an investigation of him, like, oh, this is bad, blah, blah, blah. But then it turns out multiple other Tory members faced very similar allegations of betting on elections. On June 4th, Nigel Farage was milkshaked again. For those who don't know, in the UK, milkshaking is when you throw a milkshake at a fascist politician. UKIP leaders and figures like Tommy Robinson, Farage, and Sargon of Akkad were the earliest targets of milkshaking. And this one I found very fucking interesting. I just found this really weird. Okay, so on June 22nd, J.K. Rowling made her official endorsement of this election. And she announced that she was backing the Communist Party of Great Britain because the Communist Party of Great Britain sent a letter, sent a statement to 4 Women Scotland, basically saying that they are transphobic. Then J.K. Rowling announced that she, if you're going to spoil your ballots, do it for the Communist Party, which led to the Communist Party of Great Britain to announce literally the next day, actually, we do support trans rights. Anyways, now let's get into polling. Polling-wise, Labour's doing fucking great. That's quite literally the big thing about this election. Labour is doing so great that the dialogue has no longer been who's going to win, the Tories or Labour. The dialogue is going to be who's going to get second place. Literally, let's just rattle off some, let's just rattle off in June alone. We're going to go over... I'm scrolling down the page. Okay. June alone, let's see how big of a gap we have with the Labour Party's results. Okay, I'm trying to make sure we got it right. 19, 24, 20, 21, 19, 23, 19, 23, 20, 24, 22, 20, 21, 20, 18, 25, 25, 17, 19, 22, 26, and I could just keep going on. You get the point. Most recent result has them with a 22-point lead. And looking at the seat projections, it's more lopsided. Literally right here. 324 seat lead, 262, my bad, seat lead, 256 seat lead. Literally it has right here, most recent one, 470 seats. One rather recently poll from the Daily Express has the vote total, this is just percentages. 38% Labour, 18% Conservative, 11% Lib Dems, 7% Greens, 2% SNP, and 21% for the Reform UK Party. A lot of people are expecting that Reform will probably beat the Tories in regards to vote percentage, and then maybe there's a chance that the Lib Dems could beat them in regards to seat numbers. But either way, that's worrying. The Tories are going to possibly get third place in the election? To the point where literally Nigel Farage has even made a point where sometimes he'll mention in a campaign appearance, will be I think that they should actually resign. Rishi Sunak, he's the one who's going to cause us to get a Labour victory because he's splitting the vote. And I just find it interesting that could happen. Anyways, with conclusion and support, you know that I can't in good faith support the Labour Party. Can't support them at all. So basically, I've decided to go constituency by constituency for the election. Now, first I'll just say this. Broadly, for Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, I back each of their independence parties. I back the SNP in Scotland, I back Sinn Féin in Ireland, and I back Plaid Cymru in Wales. And I'll include a list of all the people that I'll mention here in the description or in a comment. But yeah, here are all of the candidates that I'm officially endorsing. I'm endorsing, let's see, how many candidates? 37 candidates in the entirety of the United Kingdom. These are the candidates that I actually gave a shit about. Okay, so basically, here's my threshold to how to get to each of these decisions to endorse them. First, I went to the Palestine vote of the Gaza ceasefire vote and looked at some of the constituencies in there. And then I specifically looked at the Labour Party members, and then I decided to do some due diligence to research them. So first, I wanted to see who they supported in the 3 leadership contests. Jeremy Corbyn in 2015, Jeremy Corbyn again in 2016, and in 2020 or 2019, see who they backed. They didn't have to back a specific person in the last one, as long as they didn't back Starmer. So basically, the ones, at least for the Labourites, okay, so, here are all the incumbent MPs that I am currently endorsing. First, Jeremy Corbyn, Islington North, 100%, followed by Diane Abbott, Richard Bergen, Andy MacDonald, Tahir Ali, Paula Barker, Apsana Begum, Ian Byrne, Dan Carden, Peter Dowd, Barry Gardiner, Rachel Hopkins, Imran Hussain, Ian Lavery, Clive Lewis, Rebecca Long-Bailey, John McDonnell, Graham Morris, Kate Osanor, Kate Osborne, Yasmin Qureshi, Belle Ribeiro Addy, Kat Smith, Zara Sultana, John Trickett, Nadia Watomi, and that's just the Labourites. These are the only Labourites. These are the Labourites that I say are based. They voted for the Gaza ceasefire. They either supported Corbyn all the way, or they, at the very least, didn't support opponents to him. And even though I already said that I gave explicit endorsements to their parties, I'm giving special shout-outs to Liz Saville Roberts and Ben Lake of Plaid Cymru, because they also supported the Gaza ceasefire vote, and they're the only 2 Plaid Cymru incumbents. And the only incumbent of the SNP that I'm officially backing is John Nicholson, because Nicholson is facing a battle because he's drawn in the same district as a member of the Alba Party, and Nicholson supports trans rights, and the Alba guy, he's from a socially conservative party, so he doesn't. So, making special note, this guy, if you happen to be in the Alloa and Grangemouth district, go vote for John Nicholson. And I have 9 more seats to go. Alright, so another seat is Francis Whitefoot of Plaid Cymru. Okay, it's a Welsh seat, so forgive me for mispronouncing it. Merthyr, Tydfil, and Aberdare. In the district of Birkenhead, I'm backing Joe Bird of the Green Party of England and Wales. And in Ilford South, I'm backing Saeed Siddiqui. Why am I choosing these 3 specifically? Well, these are 3 of the Labourite seats that were deselected because of their stances on stuff like Palestine and Labour. So, yeah, these guys are going to come back and avenge them. Alright, so next is Brighton Pavilion. We have Sion Barry of the Green Party of England and Wales. This seat is the Green Party's only incumbent seat. The Labour candidate isn't really that good, so I'll just back them. In Waveney Valley, I'm backing Adrian Ramsey, the Green Party of England and Wales. He is the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. And, well, he's apparently leading in the polls in that district. So, that'll be a W if that works. Green Party of England and Wales gets 2 seats instead of 1. In Chingford and Woodford Green, I am backing Faiza Shaheen. In Kensington and Bayswater, I'm backing Emma Dent Code. They're 2 former Labourites who are now shifting to be independent candidates, based and good. And last but certainly not least, in the district of Coventry East, I am backing Dave Nellist of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Party. Why? Basically, he's a former Labourite from way back in the day, and he's basically now this fringe, random left-wing figure, so I figured why the heck not? So yeah, these are all the candidates that you should be supporting in the United Kingdom. Are any of them going to win? I don't know. But hey, Labour chose to dig its own grave. But unfortunately, that's going to lead them to have massive victory. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.